Hello, everybody. It's day 10 of RPGaDay 2024, August 10th. Still broadcasting from RictorCon 2020X in beautiful Seattle, Washington. The prompt for day 10 is an RPG you'd like to see on TV. That's a hard one for me. I think it's known that The Expanse is based on I think it was GURPS game that the author of The Expanse, which it started off as, of course, as a novel series and then got converted to TV. We've had a TV series based on The Witcher, again drawn primarily from the novels, with a little bit of inspiration from the video game, which is a role-playing game. It's not a tabletop role-playing game. Supposedly we're at some point going to get an actual D&D based series. But one I would really like to see put into play. What's really difficult with this question is, and I've maybe not on my podcast, but I know when in conversations other places before talked about just making a movie about Dungeons and Dragons. The suggestion is always to adapt Dragonlance or maybe some of R.A. Salvatore's Dark Elf, Drizzt Do'Urden books into a movie format. And to me, and as much as I did enjoy the most recent Dungeons and Dragons movie with Chris Pine, but on some level, when you don't, I think a D&D game or TV show, and this would extend to other role-playing games, are you adapting the game itself if you're not showing people playing the game? And so in my head, it would be almost like something like The Princess Bride, where the Princess Bride, they cut from the grandfather telling the story or reading the story to the grandson to then the characters in the story doing things, and their pauses and kind of meta references, at least by the grandfather and the grandson, not the characters. But to me, adapting a role-playing game property, if you're going to emphasize that this is based on a role-playing game, you almost need to do something like that. Otherwise, if you just take, the Dragonlance Chronicles or the Dark Elf, trilogy, or the Icewind Dale trilogy, and you just turn them into movies as the novels are, those are just fantasy movies. Of course, they're properties emerged out of D&D. But then again, The Expanse is not a role-playing game show. It is a show adapted from a novel, and the novel is based on things that happened in somebody's role-playing game campaign. But at what point are you adapting the game to television versus just telling a fantastic story or a speculative story about things that show up in role-playing games? I mean, just because you put an elf in a fantasy movie doesn't make it a D&D game, right? So that's a hard question to answer. If we're talking about universes that are associated with role-playing games, like settings, I would actually very much like to see Traveller adapted to the default Traveller setting of the Third Imperium. I'd like to see that adapted, I think. A lot of our role-playing games on the market now are themselves adaptations that are already in film, whether on television or movies. Star Trek, Star Wars, Dune, Blade Runner, Alien, things like that. So if I'm thinking of a fictional setting that has evolved primarily around a role-playing game other than D&D, I think Traveller is one I'd like to see. I really like that setting, and it's a sci-fi setting, but it's a sci-fi setting different from other types of sci-fi we've seen, although certain elements of The Expanse and of, I think, even like Firefly probably would give you some sort of Traveller-esque sorts of things. But the Third Imperium has a very specific type of setting that I think would be really, really cool to see adapted. So that's my answer for day 10. Something I'd like to see on TV would be maybe a series set in the Traveller universe, the Third Imperium, of Mankind, I think. Is it the Third Imperium of Man in Traveler? I would just call it the Third Imperium. But yeah, I would like to see that. I know they've got a series of comic books, which I referenced in one of the earlier episodes for RPGaDay that I'm enjoying so far. So I think it if you can adapt the universe into comics, you can adapt them into a TV series. So anyway, that's it for day 10. A little bit longer than my usual for this month, but till I come back next time, take care of yourself. Try to make somebody happy today.